Chapter 1. The Castaway of the Stars. In the endless black sea of the cosmos, where stars glimmered like distant promises and the swirling arms of galaxies reached across time and space, there existed countless civilizations. Some flourished in harmony with the cosmos, while others clawed desperately at the edges of extinction. Among these was the Valari, a proud and ancient alien race renowned throughout the Andromeda cluster for their unparalleled psychic abilities and their ethereal, almost translucent beauty. They were being sculpted from light and thought, their elegant forms shimmering with faint blue auras, a living testament to the mystic forces that pulsed through the veins of their homeworld, Litherus. Their society was built upon strength, mental, spiritual, and physical, and every member was expected to be an exemplar of their race's lofty ideals. Perfection was not a choice, it was a sacred obligation. Yet, in the midst of this shining dynasty, there was one who defied their expectations. Her name was Nira. From birth, she was marked by fragility, both in body and in mind. While her siblings thrived, wielding the mind's power like artists with a brush, Nira's psychic core flickered uncertainly, an unsteady pulse that never grew strong, a dim ember among roaring flames. Her limbs trembled constantly, betraying the weakness that even the most advanced Valari medicine could not remedy. Her thoughts, where others experienced harmony and clarity, were fractured like shattered glass reflecting confusing images. To the Valari, Nira was a contradiction, a blemish on their carefully curated perfection, an anomaly that challenged their fundamental beliefs. The story of Nira's early life was one painted with quiet desperation and quiet rejection. Her parents, high-ranking members of Valari society, had hoped for a child who would carry forward their lineage with the power and grace of their ancestors. Instead, they were burdened with a daughter whose frail frame seemed ill-suited for survival in a world that demanded strength. The Valari healing sanctuaries, vast temples filled with glowing crystalline conduits, became her prison. There, mystics and scientists alike tried every possible cure: psychic therapy, genetic reconditioning, energy realignment, only to watch as Nira's condition remained stubbornly broken, her essence drifting ever farther from the radiant norm of her people. Her suffering was not limited to the physical. The cultural weight of being less than was a shadow she carried even in the innocence of childhood. Among her peers, she was avoided, a figure of pity or fear. The children whispered that Nira was cursed by the stars themselves, a belief that twisted her isolation into something far worse, a spiritual exile. No festival or ceremony welcomed her presence. No mentor dared take her as a protege. Instead, she was shuffled through cold halls and sterile rooms, a fragile artifact destined to be returned, rejected, and abandoned again. Time blurred as years passed in this cycle of cold attempts and colder dismissals. Nira's body grew, but only slightly stronger, and her mind remained a labyrinth of confusion. Dozens of times, she was handed from one Valari caretaker to another, each convinced they could fix what the last had failed to mend. Each time, she was returned to the orphan sanctuaries that lined the edge of the Valari's star cluster. These sanctuaries were bleak places, hidden among asteroid belts or orbiting desolate moons, designed to contain those who did not fit the Valari mold. Here, Nira was left with others who bore their own scars and stories of rejection. But even among these forsaken souls, she stood apart. Her frailty was profound, and her psychic flashes unpredictable, sometimes violent, sometimes absent. The nights were the hardest. Alone in the cold metal dormitories, with only the distant pulse of stars outside the window to keep her company, Nira's mind spiraled through fragments of memory, snatches of a mother's whispered regrets, a father's disappointed silence. Dreams of light turned to darkness. She longed for something she could not name, a touch, a word, a place to belong. And in the silence, she often wondered if the universe itself had forgotten her. Despite the bleakness, Nira's heart held a fragile ember of hope. Somewhere deep inside, buried beneath layers of pain and rejection, was a yearning to be understood, to be more than a broken relic. She imagined distant worlds where she might find acceptance, where her fractured spirit might heal and her trembling body might rest. But the universe had been cruel, delivering only doors slammed shut and hands that pushed her away. Her legend, whispered quietly by those who knew of her, was one of tragedy and resilience. Too broken for any home, they said. Returned dozens of times, a curse no one can lift. Some believed she was a warning, a tale told to Valari children about the consequences of imperfection. Others saw her as a ghost, a fading shadow of what could have been. But Nira, in the depths of her loneliness, refused to be defined by their words. On one particularly cold morning, as the twin suns rose over the horizon of a desolate moon where the latest orphanage was located, a human starship broke the usual monotony of the outpost. The vessel was unassuming by Valari standards, worn and scarred from countless voyages, its hull patched and dented, but it carried something rare, a presence not burdened by the rigid doctrines of the Valari. The humans, with their chaotic but passionate spirit, had a reputation across the galaxies for resilience and kindness, qualities often dismissed by the more aloof alien empires. Inside that ship was Captain Elias Trent, a human who had spent his life traversing the stars not in search of conquest or glory, but in search of understanding and connection. His crew was small, his resources limited, but his determination was fierce. When his ship docked, and his gaze fell upon the fragile figure of Nira, something stirred within him, a quiet resolve that this broken girl, so often discarded by her own people, would not be returned to the shadows again. Elias saw beyond the trembling limbs and flickering mind. He saw the glimmer of life fighting to survive, a spirit yearning to be seen. With a gentle but firm voice that contrasted with the harshness she had come to expect, Elias said the words that would echo in Nira's mind for years to come. "Stay with me." Those simple words, filled with warmth and promise, broke through the fortress of loneliness surrounding her. It was the first time anyone had asked her not to leave, not to be given up on, but to be embraced for who she was, broken and beautiful. As the ship pulled away from the outpost, leaving behind the cold and rejection, Nira clung to that single hope. For the first time, she was not alone in the vast darkness of space. The universe, it seemed, had not forgotten her after all. The moment Elias extended his hand toward Nira, a trembling mix of fear and cautious hope surged through her fragile body. No one had touched her gently in years, not since her earliest memories, shrouded in a mist of pain and disappointment. Yet this human's touch was different. It was steady and kind, like a warm anchor in a storm. The Valari watchers, clad in their flowing iridescent robes, looked on with thinly veiled disdain, murmuring in their melodic tongue about how foolish this human was to claim the broken one. But Elias did not waver. His gaze held no judgment, only a quiet certainty that echoed deeply within Nira's fractured soul. The crew of the human ship moved with an easy confidence that contrasted starkly with the cold precision of Valari society. To them, Nira was not a problem to be solved or a failure to be discarded. She was a living being, deserving of care, patience, and most importantly, respect. As Elias helped her aboard, the ship's artificial gravity adjusted smoothly, and the hum of life support filled the air with a steady pulse. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Nira sensed she was somewhere she could breathe freely. The journey through the stars was long, stretching across nebulae and silent voids where the only companions were distant galaxies and flickering cosmic dust. Nira spent much of the voyage hidden beneath soft blankets in a small cabin, her body weak but her mind slowly awakening to something unfamiliar trust. Elias and the human crew took turns by her side, speaking in gentle tones, sharing stories of Earth and its myriad cultures, of resilience born from adversity. They did not expect miracles overnight. They only offered the gift of time and acceptance. Each day, Nira's body seemed to regain a little strength, though it was fragile as glass. Her psychic flickers became more rhythmic, less chaotic, and Elias observed her with a quiet wonder. To the Valari, her condition was a curse, but the human captain saw something else, the beginning of a transformation born from compassion and belonging. The ship's medbay, equipped with technology far less advanced than the Valari's but driven by human ingenuity, became a place of gentle healing rather than cold clinical detachment. One evening, as the twin moons of a distant planet rose outside her window, Nira ventured out of her cabin for the first time. The corridors of the human ship were narrow but filled with warm, soft lights, the hum of machines, the muffled voices of the crew laughing or working. She moved slowly, supported by Elias's steady hand. At the observation deck, the stars stretched out in a breathtaking tapestry. Neera gazed upward, tears slipping down her cheeks as emotions she had long suppressed welled to the surface. She was still broken, still uncertain, but she was no longer alone. "Stay with me," Elias repeated quietly, standing beside her, the words now a sacred promise rather than a mere offer. In that moment, amidst the endless cosmos, a new chapter of Neera's life began, not as a discarded relic, but as a cherished soul, fragile yet filled with hope. Chapter 2. Healing Beyond the Flesh. The days that followed were a delicate dance of healing, learning, and discovery. Neera's body remained frail, but her spirit, once so fractured and hidden, began to unfold like a delicate flower reaching toward light. Elias understood that her recovery would not be quick or simple. It required patience, kindness, and above all, respect for the unique ways her mind and body worked. The human way was imperfect, often clumsy, but it was driven by an enduring hope that even the most broken could be made whole. The ship's medbay became a sanctuary where technology and human empathy intertwined. Doctors and engineers worked side by side, developing adaptive therapies tailored to Neera's unique physiology. Machines designed for routine human ailments were reprogrammed to stabilize her delicate nervous system. Elias often sat with her during treatments, holding her hand as the soft hum of the machinery enveloped them. To the Valari, healing was an exact science, a pursuit of perfection through psychic purity. But here, healing was an act of love, of acceptance for the imperfections that made one human or alien truly alive. As Neera's physical condition slowly improved, so did her mind. The fog of confusion that had clouded her thoughts began to lift, revealing glimpses of sharp intelligence and untapped potential. She found herself captivated by the stories Elias shared, tales of Earth's diversity, its triumphs and failures, its enduring spirit against impossible odds. The human captain was not just a healer but a teacher and companion, patient and unwavering in his belief that she was more than the sum of her broken parts. One afternoon, Elias took Neera to the ship's small greenhouse, a living patch of Earth's flora amidst the cold metal corridors. The scent of soil and growing leaves was alien, yet comforting. As Neera touched the soft petals of a flowering vine, she felt a strange connection, life persisting and flourishing even in the harshest conditions. It was a metaphor for her own journey, a silent encouragement that healing was possible, not through forcing perfection but through embracing fragility. However, the shadows of her past were never far behind. Messages from the Valari emissaries arrived sporadically, cold, formal, and laced with disappointment. They demanded her return, insisting that the humans could not care for what was not meant to be. But Elias refused to yield. He sent back a simple reply: "She is under my protection. She is no longer yours to discard." The tension between the two worlds simmered beneath the surface of their fragile peace. Yet for Neera, the promise of belonging grew stronger each day. The human captain, with his unyielding resolve, showed her a new way where brokenness was not a sentence but a beginning. Together, they navigated the uncertain path ahead, bound by a hope that transcended species and stars. The human ship hummed softly as it slipped away from the cold, gray outpost where Neera had been left, once more an unwanted burden in the eyes of her own people. The crew moved with quiet efficiency around her, their presence a steady rhythm that contrasted with the chaotic storm raging inside her fractured mind. Neera lay wrapped in warm blankets, the gentle touch of Elias's hand on her forehead the first comfort she had known in what felt like an eternity. His voice was a soothing balm, carrying the promise of safety in a language that transcended words. Days melted into nights and back into days again, but aboard the human vessel, time seemed different, less hurried, less harsh. The stars outside the viewport were no longer distant points of light marking the edges of a prison, but rather beacons of infinite possibility. Neera's senses slowly adjusted to the hum of engines, the subtle vibration of the ship's core, and the soft conversations that filled the air with life. The humans spoke of worlds far beyond her imagination, of rivers of liquid crystal, mountains that sang to the wind, and skies painted in colors she could only dream of. With each story, her mind grew a little clearer, her thoughts a little less tangled. But the healing was not only physical. The deepest wounds were the ones no technology could reach, the scars of rejection, loneliness, and unspoken grief. Night after night, Elias sat by her side, listening to her whispered fears, holding her hand when tears came unbidden. He never pushed, never rushed her to be whole again. Instead, he offered patience as a gift, the rarest kind of medicine. With every gentle word and reassuring touch, Neera's heart began to thaw. The walls she had built to shield herself from the cruelty of the universe started to crumble, revealing a flicker of trust and longing for connection. At one point, Neera asked Elias about Earth, the distant blue-green planet where humans came from. She was fascinated by the stories of a place where imperfection was embraced, where the broken and the whole walked side by side, and where love was measured not by power or perfection, but by kindness and courage. Elias spoke with pride of his home, describing bustling cities filled with laughter, forests alive with whispers of ancient life, and oceans that stretched beyond sight. To Neera, these tales painted a world that felt both foreign and achingly close, a place she yearned to see one day. The human crew, too, grew fond of Neera, treating her not as a fragile project, but as a cherished member of their small family. They adapted routines to accommodate her frailty, soft meals, slower movements, constant companionship, and celebrated every small victory, a steady step, a smile, a clear thought. Their laughter filled the ship's halls, breaking the silence that had long suffocated her spirit. Yet, even as hope blossomed, shadows low. The days on the starship flowed in a rhythm foreign to Neera, yet somehow soothing after years of chaotic rejection. Time, which the Valari had never afforded her, became a precious gift. Each sunrise across distant systems brought subtle changes. Her body, still fragile but less prone to collapse, grew accustomed to movement, to light, and to the steady pulse of the human vessel beneath her feet. Her mind, once an endless maze of fractured thoughts and painful silences, began to fill with curiosity and tentative clarity. It was as if each gentle word from Elias and the crew slowly rewove the tattered threads of her identity, creating a tapestry vibrant with possibility. Elias was the constant in this transformation, a quiet presence that never pressured, never demanded. He listened with patience, spoke with kindness, and never dismissed her fears or limitations. Unlike the Valari, whose cold pursuit of perfection had driven her into isolation, Elias embraced the imperfections that made Neera who she was. He marveled at the strength it took simply for her to endure. To him, the broken pieces were not flaws, but unique parts of a whole still being formed. The ship's medbay was a world of strange devices and soft light, but it felt more like a home than any place Neera had ever known. The human doctors crafted bespoke therapies, merging their technology with the alien biochemistry they barely understood. They used gentle neurostimulation techniques to soothe the spasms that racked her limbs and delicate nutrient infusions to nourish her depleted body. Some nights, when the pain grew too sharp, Elias sat beside her, his hand a steady anchor, his voice a soothing murmur of Earth's distant seas and forests. It was in those moments Neera first tasted hope, raw, fragile, but undeniable. Outside the medbay, the ship itself was alive with activity, and gradually, Neera ventured farther. The corridors, once daunting and cold, became paths she explored with tentative wonder. She watched the crew work, their human resilience shining through every challenge. They argued, laughed, and sometimes stumbled, but always moved forward, driven by a communal spirit alien to the Valari's rigid order. Watching them, Neera felt a flicker of belonging, a sense that here, brokenness was met not with rejection, but with strength born of compassion. Elias introduced her to the ship's library, a small but rich collection of data cores containing stories, histories, and images from countless worlds. Neera was fascinated by the human tales of struggle and survival, of people who were imperfect yet fiercely determined to carve meaning from chaos. She found herself drawn to poems and songs, especially those that spoke of hope amidst despair. For the first time, she felt her fragmented thoughts align with a purpose beyond mere survival. One day, during a slow orbit of a lush, uninhabited planet, Elias took her to the observation deck. The vastness of the cosmos stretched infinitely beyond the panoramic windows, stars glittering like distant beacons. He pointed to a nebula glowing with ethereal light and whispered, "Even the most chaotic places in the universe create beauty." Neera's gaze lingered on the swirling colors, and for the first time, she believed that her own chaos might one day give rise to something beautiful. Yet, the shadows of her past remained. The Valari emissaries' transmissions grew more insistent, their voices cold and unyielding. They demanded her return, declaring the human ship unfit to harbor one so broken. The messages bore an icy finality, reminding Elias that their peace was fragile, their defiance risky. But Elias, his jaw firm and eyes resolute, responded simply, "Neera stays with me. She will heal here, in her own time." The declaration carried weight across the void, a silent challenge to a society that valued perfection over mercy. As the starship glided through the cosmos, a fragile new world was taking shape not in distant galaxies or grand empires, but within the heart of a broken girl and the human who refused to let her be forgotten. Together, they were weaving a story of healing and hope that neither the stars nor the cold judgments of alien courts could erase. Time, once a relentless enemy that marked each moment of neglect and abandonment, began to soften its edge aboard the human ship. Neera's frailty was still evident, her body fragile, her mind fragile as glass, but the oppressive weight of rejection that had shadowed her for so long began to lift. The human crew's kindness was not grand gestures or false promises. It was steady, unwavering care in the small details, a warm meal prepared just right, a whispered word in the quiet hours of night, the patient encouragement to try again when she faltered. Elias's presence was constant, an anchor she could cling to in the turbulent sea of her own uncertainty. As weeks turned to months, Neera discovered nuances to her own existence she had never known. Her psychic abilities, long dormant and chaotic, began to stabilize. With Elias's gentle guidance, she learned to harness the faint pulses of energy within her, not as a weapon or a symbol of perfection, but as an extension of herself, imperfect and raw. The ship's medics worked tirelessly, adapting human technology to nurture her alien physiology. Neuroregenerative therapies, combined with the warmth of human touch, fostered a healing that the Valari's cold temples had never managed. Neera felt a slow blossoming of strength, a tentative reclaiming of her body. Beyond the physical, something deeper shifted, the awakening of trust. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope that belonging was not just a distant dream, but a tangible reality. The crew's easy camaraderie and laughter taught her that family was not defined by blood or perfection, but by acceptance. She laughed softly at their jokes, learned their songs, and shared stories of the distant stars she barely remembered. Elias, ever patient, became both teacher and protector, encouraging her to find joy even in the smallest moments. Yet, the ship was not isolated from the wider galaxy's harsh truths. The Valari did not forget so easily. Their emissaries sent urgent communiques, demanding Neera's return and warning of consequences should humans continue to shelter one they deemed broken. The cold calculus of politics and pride threatened the fragile sanctuary Elias had created. But with quiet defiance, Elias refused to relinquish his charge. "She is not broken," he insisted in transmissions that rippled across the stars. "She is healing, in her own way, on her own time." Neera's journey was no longer one of mere survival. It had become a testament to resilience, a fragile life refusing to be discarded, nurtured by a human spirit that saw beauty in imperfection. Together, they sailed through the stars, rewriting the narrative that had long condemned her, and discovering that healing went far beyond flesh and mind. It was found in belonging, in acceptance, and above all, in love. Chapter 3: Bonds Beyond Worlds. The human ship cruised steadily through uncharted space, its destination unknown even to most aboard, driven not by strategic conquest, but by an urgent mission of hope. Neera, once a girl adrift in a galaxy that had turned its back on her, now stood on the cusp of transformation not just physical but spiritual. Each day brought new challenges, but also new triumphs. The fragile light within her flickered more steadily, casting long shadows over the walls of doubt that had once imprisoned her. Elias remained her unwavering companion, his belief in her strength unshaken by the doubts of others. Their relationship deepened beyond that of caretaker and ward, becoming a complex bond of mutual respect and quiet affection. Elias saw in Nira a soul that mirrored the very resilience humans prize, the ability to endure, adapt, and find meaning in brokenness. Nira, in turn, found in Elias a beacon of safety and understanding, a human heart that beat fiercely against the cold indifference she had known all her life. The crew watched this bond with a mixture of awe and curiosity. Many had never encountered a Valari so fragile, nor seen the stubborn light of life refuse to be extinguished. They adapted their own routines to accommodate Nira's needs, but also to welcome her presence as a source of inspiration. She became a symbol of hope on the ship, a living testament to the possibility that even those cast aside by their own kind could find a home among strangers. Yet the shadows of the past were never far away. Valari patrols tracked the human vessel, their scanners probing for signs of their lost daughter. The diplomatic strain between the Valari and humans grew palpable, threatening not just Nira's sanctuary, but the fragile peace that hung in the balance. Rumors whispered through star systems that the Valari might attempt to reclaim her by force. Elias knew that protection meant more than kindness. It meant preparing for war, for resistance, for a battle that transcended physical might and touched the very heart of what it meant to belong. But for now, beneath the endless stars and within the sanctuary of the ship, Nira and Elias nurtured the fragile seed of a new beginning. Together, they faced the vast unknown not as broken and discarded, but as a testament to a bond forged beyond worlds. The days aboard the ship stretched into weeks, each moment steeped in quiet determination and fragile hope. Nira's progress was slow but unmistakable. Her steps, once tentative and wobbly, now carried a steadier rhythm, each movement a testament to the strength she was reclaiming not just in body but in spirit. The psychic flickers that had once been sharp and erratic grew into a soft, steady glowing ember nurtured by patient hands and kind words. She learned to channel her scattered thoughts into meditative focus, guided by Elias's calm voice and the unwavering support of the human crew. The bond between Elias and Nira deepened, blossoming into something neither had anticipated but both cherished an unspoken trust, a connection beyond words or species. Elias saw her not as a fragile alien in need of saving, but as a partner in survival and discovery. His respect was quiet but fierce, his presence a constant reminder that she was no longer alone in the cosmos. Nira, for the first time, allowed herself to lean into that trust, to believe that love and belonging were possible despite the scars she bore. Life aboard the ship became a rhythm of shared moments. Long conversations beneath the star-speckled viewport, quiet laughter in the mess hall, silent understanding in the ship's gardens where earth plants thrived under artificial suns. The crew, initially uncertain about harboring the Valari outcast, grew protective of her. To them, Nira was a symbol of the fragile beauty born from resilience, a living testament that even the most broken souls could find a way to shine. They adapted their routines, ensured she never felt isolated, and celebrated every step she took toward wholeness. But the universe beyond the ship remained unforgiving. The Valari did not relinquish their claim lightly. Their patrols shadowed the human vessel, their scanners probing relentlessly for signs of their lost daughter. Diplomatic channels crackled with tension, threats veiled in cold, precise language. Rumors spread of a potential confrontation, a storm brewing in the void that could shatter the fragile peace between two civilizations. Elias knew that protecting Nira meant more than shelter and care. It meant readiness for battle, vigilance in the face of looming threats, and the courage to defy the galaxy's harshest judgments. Yet even amid this uncertainty, within the walls of the ship, a new story was being written, a story of healing, of belonging, of love transcending the bounds of species and history. Nira was no longer a discarded fragment of a proud race. She was a beacon of hope, a symbol of the extraordinary strength found in acceptance and compassion. Together, She and Elias faced the vast unknown, not as broken and forsaken, but as partners forging a new path across the stars. Chapter 4. A New Home Among the Stars. The tension in the galaxy was palpable, yet aboard the ship, a serene sense of purpose prevailed. Nira, once a wandering fragment lost to the void, now found herself rooted in a community that embraced her imperfections as part of a greater whole. Elias stood by her side, his unwavering support a fortress against the prejudice and pride that had once condemned her to exile. Together, they embodied a fragile but unbreakable bond, proof that belonging was not dictated by bloodlines or psychic power, but by the simple yet profound act of acceptance. As the ship sailed onward, navigating the starlit highways of the cosmos, Nira grew stronger not only in body but in spirit. Her mind, once fragmented and chaotic, now pulsed with clarity and purpose. She learned to wield her psychic gifts not as burdens, but as tools to connect, to heal, and to protect. The human crew marveled at her resilience, their admiration deepening into genuine affection. For many, she became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even the most broken could find a place to call home. Yet peace was hard-won. The Valari continued their pursuit, their emissaries demanding her return with increasing urgency. The threat of conflict hung over the ship like a storm cloud, and Elias prepared for the inevitable confrontation. But he also prepared for something more profound, the moment when the galaxy would see that compassion could overcome prejudice, and that the bonds forged in kindness could reshape the stars themselves. In the quiet moments before battle, Nira stood on the observation deck, gazing out at the infinite expanse. The stars stretched endlessly before her, a tapestry of light woven through the darkness. She thought of the orphanages, the cold halls, the countless times she had been cast aside. But those memories no longer defined her. Here, with Elias and the crew, she had found something far greater than strength or perfection. She had found a home. "Stay with me," Elias said softly, joining her side. "Not just as a passenger on this ship, but as my partner, my family." Nira turned to him, her eyes shining with tears and newfound hope. "I will," she whispered, "because with you, I am whole." As the ship surged forward into the unknown, carrying with it the fragile promise of a future rewritten, two souls once broken, now united faced the stars together, ready to meet whatever challenges awaited with courage, love, and the unyielding strength of belonging. The days following Nira's quiet vow to Elias were filled with a mixture of peaceful routine and mounting tension. Though the vastness of space outside the ship's hull shimmered with serene beauty, within the corridors, an unspoken alertness pulsed like a second heartbeat. The Valari patrols had intensified, their sleek warships slicing through star systems in search of their lost daughter. Messages crackled through encrypted channels, thinly veiled threats laced with ancient pride and rigid authority. But Elias, ever steadfast, refused to yield or retreat. He fortified the ship's defenses, trained his crew for every conceivable scenario, and prepared himself for a confrontation he hoped to avoid but was determined to face if necessary. Nira, once trembling under the weight of her own brokenness, now stood as a symbol of defiance and hope. Her psychic energies had grown stronger, not because of Valari's standards of perfection, but through the quiet strength born of love and acceptance. She was learning to channel her powers with deliberate care, soothing the minds of anxious crew members, reinforcing the ship's energy shields, and even communicating with distant life forms through empathic threads woven delicately across the void. The transformation was breathtaking, a testament to what could bloom when patience and kindness replaced condemnation. Within the ship, a new kind of family had blossomed. The crew, once wary and uncertain, now regarded Nira with deep affection and respect. They had witnessed her courage, her vulnerability, and the quiet battles she fought within herself. Together, they shared laughter and tears, meals and stories, creating a tapestry of belonging that no Starship Patrol or alien empire could unravel. For Nira, these bonds were more precious than any psychic gift, proof that home was not a place defined by birthright, but by hearts open enough to accept her as she was. One evening, as the ship drifted near a lush, uncharted world glowing with twilight hues, Nira found herself standing alone on the observation deck, gazing out into the infinite. The stars stretched endlessly, brilliant and indifferent, yet within that boundless night, she felt the fierce warmth of belonging kindle deep inside. Memories of cold halls and whispered rejections flickered briefly, then faded like distant echoes. The future stretched before her uncertain, but filled with possibility. Elias joined her silently, his presence steady and sure. "No matter what comes," he said softly, "this ship is your home, and I am with you." Nira turned to face him, her eyes reflecting the cosmos itself, a universe of broken stars made whole by light. "Then let them come," she whispered, voice trembling but strong. "Because I will stand here, with you." As the stars pulsed beyond the hull, a silent promise bound two souls across the galaxies. That love and acceptance could shatter even the coldest walls, and that even the most broken could find a place among the stars to call home.